Yeah, let's go ahead and get it pushing.
Well, good morning, ladies. Happy Saturday. Thank you for joining us for Millennials on the Move. We're going to go ahead and get started. Mindful of your time. Virtual first-time home buying workshop. I am the realtor speaking today. I'm Ashley Kennedy. Otis, if you want to.
Yes, and I'm Otis L. Milton, the mortgage millennial. I'm super excited to be with you guys this morning. So thank you for attending this workshop and making smoothies and still being here. Jazz, we appreciate you. So we're going to get into some good conversations this morning and let you know what you need to know in this market, how to purchase a home.
Yes, and usually we'll have a larger attendance, but since it's smaller, it's more intimate, which actually works out great for you two, because you guys can get all your questions answered. Let me think. Since it's so small and intimate, if you guys have a question, you can feel free to unmute. You can use the chat if you like, but you can feel free to unmute to ask your question directly. I would say be mindful because this is recorded. If you have anything that is like personal, directly, may not, for example, if your credit score needs some, improving, you don't want to discuss, you can always chat with us afterwards. But yeah, feel free to ask as questions come up. This is meant to be interactive. You don't have to wait to the end. Just go ahead and chime in as we're discussing topics if you have any questions, okay? So what we're going to cover today is we'll introduce ourselves briefly, and then we're going to discuss preparing for home ownership, the actual home buying process itself. I'll go through that. Financing, Otis will answer any questions regarding financing. And then we can, if there's any other questions at the end, we'll do that. Let me jump right in. So like I said, sorry, went too fast. I'm Ashley Kennedy. I am a Los Angeles area realtor. I'm licensed state of California. So if life happens and decide, you know what, I need to move to Nevada or whatever the case may be, I can still help you with that process. I can connect you with the agent. I have a large referral agent network. So I've helped people that have actually attended my workshops. I've had people that purchased in Nevada, Georgia, Ohio, I'm forgetting some, but all over the place. So yeah, we can help you regardless. If you're not already following me on Instagram, please follow me. It's Ashley Kennedy Realtor. I like to share my events on there and just any tips, anything like that. Trying to think of anything else. A little about me. I was born and raised in Inglewood. I graduated from King Drew High School. It's over in Watts. I went to college in Orange County at UC Irvine. I have a husband and two little girls. And we are homeowners. We've been in our house this month makes 4 years. So our house wasn't the Pinterest house. It needed some work, but it's been fun because that helps me with clients as far as getting the house that has the potential, a nice area, and then you can always make those improvements along the way. I've had experience with renovations and all that. I think I work with a lot of first-time home buyers. I love it. It's my passion. It just kind of, because it can be life-changing for someone's family and just their finances in general. So that's a little about me. Let me think what else. I've been licensed for 7 years now. And yeah, I love helping people get their first house. And then when life changes and you're ready to move up to that next property, I can assist them with selling that first property or renting it out and then just kind of going from there. And then Otis can tell you a little about himself.
Thank you, Ashley, and good morning again, ladies and gentlemen, if there's anybody listening in the background. My name's Otis L. Milton. I am a mortgage advisor and co-owner of a mortgage bank. I have been in the industry of real estate for 10 years next month. It's my 10-year anniversary. I started out as a real estate agent. Like Ashley, I think that's when I first met her. I was actually still an agent. And I transitioned over to do mortgages. Wanted to learn just more about the financing piece. There's not a lot of knowledge on that side, especially from minority loan officers. So that was a huge goal of mine. And so I've transitioned over, and for the past 5 years, I've solely focused on mortgages. And I've had quite a bit of success in that realm. I am father of 4 daughters, so that means I have to work extremely hard because they all have things that they want and need, etc. I have one that's getting ready to go to college next year, so keep me uplifted in prayer, please. Yeah, that is, and I share it with Ashley in terms of just the feeling that it gives us to be able to help someone purchase a home, especially that first time. There's really nothing like it. That's what makes the job fun. That's what makes it gratifying. So That's a little bit about me. I've served on a lot of volunteer organizations as well. I'm a part of one of the largest African American real estate association by the name of NARAB, where I've held lots of leadership positions. I was recently elected as the president for my local chapter of Los Angeles. So I'm extremely excited and proud about that. Also, that starts next year, so keep me lifted in prayer as well as more gets on my plate. But I'm just excited to continue to serve my community. So um, back to you, Ash. We can keep moving
I
forward.
forgot to mention one reason that we love doing these workshops is one, we're sharing reliable, free information because some people, the internet and family and hearsay, they mean well, but it's not as reliable. So you're getting reliable information from actual professionals in the field. Also, there's a huge homeownership gap between minorities in America and our white counterparts. So that is another reason that I feel putting these workshops on is so important, to share this information with you all so you can share with your family and friends, and so we can increase those numbers of homeownership. Let's see. Really quick, well, I guess I was going to ask them how do they hear about the workshop. I know one of them.
Let's do the polls. We can do the polls. I'll drop the first one.
I feel like one of the
So the polls
do
drop.
you guys see the polls on your screens?
Do you see it, Ashley?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to say, Ashley, I know your husband from work, and so he told me about this workshop, and I think the last time that you did it, or one of the last times you did it, I signed up, but then I couldn't attend, and so I'm happy to be able to attend today.
Well, thank you for joining us, and high five for John.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Shouts out to brother John, keeping us motivated and marketing us.
Okay, cool. We'll keep it going. So why do you want to become a homeowner? We don't have a, no, I don't think we have a poll for this one, but you guys just unmute and talk. It varies person to person. Some people it's creating generational wealth. Some people your lease is ending at your current rental and you are tired of having to get out or, not having that stability. Some people, it's just kind of various reasons. So just curious, why do you want to become a homeowner?
For me, it's always been almost kind of like why I work so hard. It's just like I've grown up, wanting to be a homeowner. It's just like how I was raised, and we grew up in a home. And at the same time, I always have wanted to live in California, but now I'm going on my 8th year, and it just feels like it's getting further and further away, even though I'm working harder and harder and actually feeling like I'm in a good place financially. But now that I'm in a good place, it also feels further and further away. It's really interesting feeling.
Yes.
Yes. And the other thing that you said too is generational wealth, wanting to start that, make sure we keep it in the family for generations to come.
Awesome. So that's a lot of people. Sometimes it's financial, and then it's kind of a little both. So yeah, like same as you, I grew up in a home, and then it's just crazy because my husband and I both have degrees, and it's like, why is this so? It feels unattainable sometimes. But we are in Los Angeles or California area, so it's just much pricier here. But yeah, we are here to kind of help with that. Also, as we progress with the workshop, Otis will go into financing to kind of break things down, and then it's like, okay, you can breathe a little. Like, okay, it's not as daunting as it seems because there's some options with financing. So let me see, there's something in the chat. Okay, provide stability for my children growing up. We moved around, so just so yeah, that's a part of it too. Yeah, that's the stability. Like with your house, you can do what you want. There's not the whole, for example, if you had apartments, someone's on the building, you can kind of create those roots. So it's really awesome. And just, as kids grow up, they have somewhere to come back to. Okay, so I'm going to go through these real quick. It's kind of fears versus facts. So sometimes you hear, I can't afford to buy a home right now. And I hear that all the time. And I really encourage buyers, please speak with a lender like you don't know. Even my personal experience, I was in real estate and it was so, we were so fearful to talk to a lender because people are afraid that to hear no, or like you can't get pre-approved, you know, and you're going to be pre-approved. It's just a matter of it's the amount you want, but don't count yourself out. Always speak to a reliable lender first. If the number isn't where you want it to be, that's okay. It's a starting point. Great lenders will help you develop a plan to get you where you want to be. Another one is I should pay off all my student loans before purchasing. Totally not true. Otis will discuss that later, but you can have student loan debt and purchase a home. My husband has a ton. I have some as well. So yeah, it's definitely possible. I don't have a 20% down payment. Oh, I just got that this week, actually. So many people think you have to have a 20% down payment, which is totally not true. In the past, you know, that was needed, but it's no longer needed. Sometimes people will get information from family members that purchased decades ago, or they just don't want the PMI, so they think, okay, I'm going to get the 20%. But if you're purchasing anywhere near Southern California, we have appreciation. So it's like you're trying to chase the market, and usually you're just not going to be able to keep up. By the time you get to that 20% of your original desired price point, the homes have gone up. So you got to save more. So if you are in a position to purchase and it's less than 20%, that's totally fine. Still get in the market, and you know, you can always refi later and have the PMI dropped. And if you're like, what is PMI? Don't worry, we're going to discuss it later. I can't afford to buy my dream house. That's okay. The best way to get to your dream home is purchasing that first home, whether that be a 1-bedroom condo, a smaller starter home, that's a 2-bed, 1-bath. Get the first place. Over time, you're going to keep paying that mortgage. The balance is going to come down. You're going to have equity. And it's also as the neighborhood appreciates. So you have that equity, and you can use that equity to go towards purchasing your next home, rather it be in a different neighborhood, a larger home, a higher price point, but definitely don't not purchase because it's not your dream home. So the 6 steps to home ownership. So I would say step 1 is find yourself a great realtor. Me. But yeah, and you can always interview other agents, but you want to find someone that's knowledgeable, they understand the market of wherever it is that you're looking to purchase, and that has, if you're a first-time buyer, that has that experience working with a first-time buyer. You want someone that's, I'm huge on educating clients. Like, you got pre-approved to start looking. We're going to have and I'll go through it, but we are going to have phone consultation first to kind of see where you're at in the process. And then after that, I'll connect you with an awesome lender. Otis is always one of my go-tos. The lender will discuss, they will kind of go through like what your desired monthly payments, they'll discuss your assets, your liabilities, and they'll kind of help you with that whole financial portion of things. And then once you're actually pre-approved, then we have a virtual buyer's consultation. It usually lasts about an hour or so, and that's where I dive into the process more. I won't go super deep today because I don't want to overwhelm you too. And then also we go through your needs and wants in a property, like what you have to have, what are your deal breakers? So we kind of discuss those things. We discuss areas, neighborhoods, like if you need to be in a certain school district, like all those things, or commute for work, we discuss that. And then once you decide, okay, I think we're a good fit, we're going to work together, then we begin locating properties. And so we'll tour homes. If you think something, could really work for you, then we'll go ahead and put an offer in. Once your offer is accepted, that's the fun part. Then we'll do your inspections, you get the appraisal done. Otis and his team are working on getting your file ready, so we can make sure your file can close for loan. And then after all that, that's when you close escrow, and then you get the keys to your home. You guys have any questions about this portion before I go on? No? Okay. And so why do I need a buyer's agent? Which is funny because everything going on in the media. So as a buyer's agent, like I said, I'm big on educating my clients, making sure I know the market, where it is that you're purchasing. For example, the market for condo townhomes versus single family, that can be different. We're going to always analyze your needs and wants during the consultation. Then I show you the homes that fit your criteria. So you're telling me what you're looking for. And then based on that, I'm only going to show homes I think that'll fit that. I also coordinate the work of other professionals. So for example, when it comes time for your inspections, you always can use whatever vendor that you choose. I will recommend some that I've worked with and, come highly recommend it, but it's always up to you. So let's say you get your home inspection done, right? Hope everything is clean, it's a whistle, and it's amazing, but these are homes, so it's likely going to be something. Say the general home inspector recommends you have a plumber come out. Okay, I know my clients, they have lives, they're working, everything. So I will reach out to someone, or if you have a plumber you want, and if you can't make it to that inspection, that's totally fine. I'll arrange it. I'm there. I get a video afterwards of their findings, just to kind of keep things flowing and as smooth as possible in a timely manner, because escrows, we do have timelines. So yeah, I coordinate all that. If I need to meet an appraiser for listing agent, anything like that, I'm there. And then I also, of course, negotiate on your behalf. Everything's always up to you, but I will share my professional opinion, and we always talk things out and whatever makes sense for you. And then solve any problems that may arise. Yep. And this part I need to update for the future. So really quickly, normally, as of now, normally the commission is paid for by the seller. There is a whole NAR lawsuit thing going on, so that could change in the future. But if there's ever a time where a buyer would need to pay a commission, we always discuss that before submitting offers. So you're never caught off guard with anything like that. And then just really determining your why. We kind of discussed earlier the reasons that you may want to purchase a home, and it's always determine that why. Keep that in mind, because home buying journey, it can be a little roller coaster and emotional, because it's finances as well as emotions. And for some people, it's a purchase. It's a huge purchase. It may take some steps to prepare ourselves financially for it. So it's kind of like really in the beginning of the process, determine your why, and always keep that in mind when things get a little crazy. Okay, so Otis, I'll let you take over this question. Before we jump into the financing part, which is usually what people are here for, do you all have any questions?
And while they're thinking,
Okay, well, you go ahead.
The why is super important, Ashley. I'm glad that you said that. The why is super important because yes, there are so many things that will happen once you even make up your mind that you want to buy a house. From like Ms. Jazz said at the beginning, like just feeling like overwhelmed of like, Jesus, I've been working so hard to get there. And it can get, get in your mind that maybe this isn't for me, right? And so, but if that why is that, I'm looking to build generational wealth for my family or my children, that's bigger than any hurdle that you're going to come across. And so just remember that you have to stay the course to be able to, to be able to make to the finish line. Jazz, you have your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, and maybe you all will talk about this, but I guess I do wonder about, holding on to the why, but I hear that sometimes, things fall through right at the last minute. And I wonder what are the common reasons why things may fall through, but maybe that'll be discussed.
Yeah.
That's a great question. That can happen with us. It's not likely. It doesn't happen often. I've never had, I'm trying to think. No, I've never had a deal fall through the last minute. But that's also important to keep in mind. It's really important who you work with. For me, when I'm working with lenders, I want everything done, like do the heavy lifting up front. That's the reason that I don't just take buyers out without the pre-approval. I want to make sure we're looking at properties that you can afford. Then once the process is once escrow is open, Otis and his team, that's what you can discuss, like underwriting and all that. They're doing all that up front, so there's no surprises last minute and then the deal falls apart. Like we do everything that we can, as long as buyers are being honest with us, to prepare to make sure we have a successful closing.
Yeah, and traditionally it doesn't happen that often, and that's where it's like you got to be tough because the narratives will be built that like that's a regular thing. Like that's so not regular to happen, but it only takes one or two situations. But a few situations that I've seen where it's happened, I've had someone lose their job the week that they were supposed to close. Right. And so now there's what's called a written verification of employment that is done at the week of closing to make sure that you still have your job. And this kind of happened during COVID because people were getting laid off from their jobs, super last minute. If your income changes, your ability to repay the loan goes away. That's a reason. Typically, in other things that I've had, sometimes the buyer and the seller can't agree upon, maybe there's something that needs to be done to the property and the seller doesn't want to do it and the buyer doesn't want to accept it as is and they can't agree. That's where that happens. It's very seldomly that a loan or a deal falls through at the end when everything is right. It's typically something going on with that particular file or that particular purchase contract. So for me, I think I've had in my entire career of doing loans, I think I've had one deal fall out. And this was a couple of years ago. And it was, and like Ashley said, this is why it's honest. You gotta be honest. But because and it fell through, but we ended up making it happen. We ended up having to cancel the contract, go back in the contract, but it fell through because she didn't tell me that she owed the IRS $15,000 and that she was paying them every month, but it doesn't show on her credit. Right. So this is where the honesty and like transparency is super important. I'm not the financial police, right? I'm not here, to rat on you, tell the IRS, none of that. But if I don't know everything, it's hard for me to structure the deal to make sure that the transaction is as smooth as possible for you. And so it doesn't happen as often as people might, as the media, as people might lead you to believe, especially if the person is thorough up front. Now, it does happen in instances where you go to large institutions. I won't say any of the big bank names, but you guys know what we're talking about. They may not do a full pre-approval on you. They'll do what's called a pre-qual or pre-qualification. And that's you just telling them your information. I think my credit's around 700. I make around X amount of dollars per year. They'll give you what's called a pre-qual letter. Now you go out and you said, now Ashley's not going to take you out with a pre-qual letter probably, but some agents will, right? And you go out and you get a pre-qual letter, you get into a contract, and then they run your credit and it's actually 50 points less, right? Or you have more debt than you told them you did. Now you're in a contract and your file doesn't match what they said, right? So often that kind of happens, but a lot of agents aren't even dealing with you with a pre-qual because they need to know, like, is your credit real? There's even some listings that won't even allow you in until they see your buyer's pre-approval or their credit scores or whatever the case may be. So it doesn't happen as often as they would like to believe. But I hope that answers your question, Jack.
I have to add in, when you initially asked the question, I was thinking in terms of like a deal falling through at the last minute, like, the week of closing. But now let's say, for instance, with buyers, we get into escrow and we're doing inspections. If that inspection report, like the house, what's it called, lipstick on a pig, you thought it was great. I've actually had that happen, like maybe it was 2 summers ago. The house looked fine, it looked great. And then you get that inspection report and you're like, whoa, this is way more.
Right.
Oh, during that inspection thing, see if you want to cancel, we can't negotiate to make things work out and you don't feel it's a good fit for you, we can cancel. That's no problem. But yeah, as far as regards to falling apart the last minute, like, week closing, no, like Otis said, that's not often at all. But when in that inspection time frame, yeah, if it doesn't work out and we can't figure it out and they're not willing to make repairs or give credits to make things sufficient, then yeah, we go ahead and you get your money back, your deposit back. You will have paid for inspection, which you deposit back, and then we just keep on looking for the right property.
And the last part about this, I'll say, and we'll move on, because I've actually had a client do this before. This is why we tell people, whenever you go into the home buying process, especially by the time you get into escrow, you cannot open any new credit. Right. And so I've had a client do that. And she went in, she got super happy because she thought we were at the end. She actually signed her loan docs and she went to Sears and like bought like new washer and dryer, like dishwasher, the whole nine. But now most lenders are going to do what's called do a soft pull at the end to make sure you haven't established any new debt. Right? Because that debt has to be factored into your debt to income ratio, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides. Luckily, she had the money. She went back, she refunded on her credit card and paid the cash. And, like, thank God that was the case and we're able to make it close. But that's the other reason, is that someone goes and buys a car when they're in escrow. And that changes their debt to income ratio. Again, those are so far and few. But that's why we will have these conversations with you. Ashley has a consultation with you. I have a consultation with you. So you kind of really know everything you should and shouldn't do during the process to make sure that when you get there, it's smooth sailing as possible. All right. So briefly, let's talk about credit. What does my credit score need to be? We probably hear that question so frequently as real estate professionals. So some of the minimum credit scores, if you're looking for an FHA loan, minimum credit score is a 580, and that is to still be allowed to put down 3.5% down. FHA actually goes down to 500 credit score, but if your credit score is below a 500, it requires a 10% down payment. So we're looking for a 580 minimum on FHA to be able to put down the minimum down payment, which is 3.5%. Oh, hey, little one. And then we have on conventional loans, a conventional loan minimum FICO score is a 620. Okay, 620, and that's regardless if you're putting down 3%, 5%, 10, or 20%. For conventional loans, a credit score needs to be at a minimum 620. Obviously, the higher the score, the better the terms and the rate will be. But that's the minimum requirement. And then for VA loans, there's really no set amount. I haven't really seen any get approved below 580, but I've had some in the high 500s for VA loans get approved. It's ran through an automated system, so it'll give you an approval or not. So for VAs, there's no set particular minimum. And then for down payment assistance loans, the minimum score is about a 640, but to be in that they change the minimum score requirement varies depending on the program. So the minimum score is 680, 640, but I would say if you were looking to take advantage of any down payment assistance, I would shoot for a minimum of a 680 credit score for any down payment assistance. None of them are above 680. That way you have everything available to you, and then we can kind of sort out and see which one works best for you. Then the other part in terms of judgments or bankruptcies, if you're bankruptcy, depending on the chapter that you filed, it does need to be discharged. Some loans have a waiting period. Some loans do not have a waiting period after it being discharged. All collections need to be paid before you start speaking, but I want to, and we're going to change that because there's a lot of people that will go pay collections from years ago, and it will bring the credit new and actually lower your credit score. So that's where I would like to, we have our consultation, we look at your credit before we have you start paying off any collections, because that could actually have a negative impact on your credit score. Most of the time, a collection's already done its damage on your score. So the way that we combat that is adding new positive things to your credit. So maybe paying down your current credit card to a lower balance will give you a substantial increase in your score versus paying off that Capital One card from college. It's done. Just let it go. Okay, we're gonna move forward. Okay, so these are some of your basics in terms of credits. Jazz has a question.
Sorry, I feel like I'm asking a lot, but
No,
that's
we
good.
want to ask all the questions, please.
Okay. I guess I was wondering then, are there times where you're working with someone for a while because, when you first meet them, maybe they're not where they need to be initially, and then you're working together for a while until they get to where they need to be?
Yeah, I can tell you, the longest person I've worked with was for 2 years. 2 years, single mother, USC graduate. She's a therapist, multiple $100,000 of student loan debts. We worked together for 2 years before we were able to get her into her first home. So yeah, I'm in Ashley. I don't want to speak for her, but I'm sure she's pretty much the same. We're as invested as you are, right? So like, if you are really ready to make the changes and take the steps, yeah, it might take you. If you got a $10,000 credit card, it might take you 6 months or whatever the case may be to get that paid down. And we always will kind of stay in touch and make sure that we're touching base. Whenever I have someone that's not ready right at the moment, I give them kind of a breakdown of the steps that they need to take to get ready. And typically we'll set a timeline. Okay, how long do you think this needs? You need 3 months for this? Okay, cool. So we're going to follow up in 2.5 months and check on your progress. Are you here? So I've had people I've met this one day and they were in escrow the next day. And I've had people as far as 2 years, 18 months, 12 months. I would say maybe a quarter of the bar of buyers that I helped this year, they were clients from last year that came in, and either the market wasn't ready, they couldn't find a property that they wanted, all of that stuff. So we're locked in as long as you are.
Yeah, for me, honestly, yeah, majority of my clients are, I honestly think I might have had like maybe 2 that were like ready to go. And one of them, they were near retirement age. So obviously at that point in life, your assets are going to be a much different position than, when you have a young family. And then one, I think, was ready to go, but that's also with assistance from family. So yeah, like you said, most people, that close, it's like someone that's in the workshop maybe a year, maybe 2 years before, and just kind of, stayed the course, stayed in touch, and just follow the guide to get there. So yeah, if you're not ready to go immediately, that's totally normal.
Yeah.
Especially in California, our prices are so high. So, and we have a high cost of living. So it's completely different elsewhere where things, you can have debt and still work a regular job and be able to afford things. So
I tell people that all the time. You got to figure 90% of the country, other places in the country, you don't have a problem, right?
You're
You,
not broke,
you
just
just
in
happen
California.
to live, yeah, you just happen to live in the most expensive state in the country, right? So I tell people, don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. And I know that's easier said than done because it's extremely easy to get overwhelmed and discouraged in this process. But we have to look at the reasons why we're doing it. Yes, we have those important reasons like build generational wealth, but then if we look at the wealth gap, right, and we look at why does other demographics have higher generational wealth or net worth wealth? It's because of home ownership. That's just a fact. Some people get lucky and maybe some family leaves them assets, etc. But most people are going to make money over owning land and property. That's the fact, right? And so reason why African Americans have the least amount of wealth is because we own the least amount of properties, right? That's just a fact, right? We are the only major demographic that's under 50% home ownership. And so we got to remember that the reason why this isn't easy because of look at the reward, right? The reward, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? So remember, it's a challenge, but it's also necessary and important. We can go to the next slide, Ash. Okay, so what you need to get pre-approved. So this first one, this is talking about someone who has a job or who's W-2 employed, right? So someone that receives paycheck stubs, W-2s, et cetera, right? So some of the things that you need.
Just since there's only a couple on here, are either of you like self-employed or just more so like a W-2? That way we can kind of focus the conversation on it.
I'm both.
Okay, well, great, Otis, you can discuss both. Great.
Yeah, good. I actually I've noticed that I'm actually having more and more people that are both. To be able to live, you almost got to, probably find some type of side hustle that you can grow. We got someone else coming in. Let me let her in. Okay, so we're talking about what you need to get pre-approved. So we're talking about W-2 employees. How you doing, Miss Ashley?
I can't, but it'll be recorded, so we'll make sure you get the recording so you can catch what you missed earlier.
All right, so two most recent pay stubs. If this is for your job, you're gonna have your two most recent bank statements from any account that you're planning to use for the purchase, right? We have to be able to source all funds. I just went through this with someone who's closed yesterday, so we have to be so again, just because you show me all of your assets, I'm not here to spend all of your money. If that's, if that's not your goal, then we're going to do whatever it is that your goal is, right? But we got to know what we have to work with because some loan programs, and depending on the type of property that you're purchasing, it may require for you to have reserves, etc. So we want to see where the assets are coming from. We'll look at your two most recent years of W-2s. So right now that's 21 and 22, but after February, we'll be looking for 22 and 23. We'll look for a copy of your ID, and then obviously you'll have a completed loan application that you will complete from my secure link. So not a lot of stuff here that you need for the W-2 side, pay stubs, bank statements, W-2s, okay? We can go to self-employed on the next slide.
Okay, just a quick question, my brain. Did you mention if they have to get their credit pulled for this?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Did you mention if they have to get their credit pulled for this?
Yeah, to be pre-approved, yes. So whenever you're getting pre-approved, we do review the credit. The particular reason why is to validate the pre-approval, we run this your application through what's called a desktop underwriting program, or DU. You might hear DU or LP. What that does is that validates your pre-approval. that says that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA will buy this loan, being that it fits it because it fits all of our guidelines, right? And it pulls the data directly from your credit report into that approval, right? So you could get a pre-qual without running your credit, but remember, we talked about what a pre-qual might have you out here looking and feeling like, okay? But if you do a pre-approval, that is we've reviewed your credit, we've reviewed your income, we reviewed your assets. As long as all of this stays the same, we're able to close this loan. So again, that gives you a little bit more peace of mind when you're out there searching, that I don't have to worry about what about when they run my credit after I'm already in a contract, right? So pre-approval, yes, we do have to review your credit. Pre-qualification, if you just want to find out kind of where I stand, maybe I'm not looking to put in offers tomorrow, we could do a pre-qual, and that does not require a credit pool.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that because a lot of buyers are hesitant to
Right.
get their credit pulled.
Right.
But don't be scared. It's part of the process, and
Right.
it doesn't. How does it affect their credit score when you guys run it? It's not like
Good
anything
question.
significant.
And they run their credit score to get that iPhone 15. So
Okay.
you guys can run this credit score to
Good
get
point.
you a house. You understand? But for one, the credit report that we run, it lasts for 4 months. So
Okay.
it's not like it's gonna be happen every other week or month or anything like that. It's good for 4 months.
And honestly, 4 months, if you're ready to go, like that's enough time to start the process, find properties, open escrow, and close. It really can't be time. Some people take longer, but that is enough time for
Right.
things.
And generally, inquiry has about a 3 to 5 point hit on your credit.
So it's very
So
minimal.
it's extremely minimal. Like running your credit for a mortgage application is like you're not going to drop 20 points or 30 points or nothing even substantial. At max 3 to 5 points. And that's with running your credit for anything, right? Whether that's to buy a car or to get a credit card or whatever the case may be. An inquiry typically is about 3 to 5 points. Okay, is what's necessary.
And before we move on, just because you mentioned inquiries, I know I've encountered some buyers, rather than speaking to more than one lender, they go with whoever, somebody that's not in this field recommended to them, because they're like, oh, well, they already put my credit, so I don't want to talk to somebody else and have it pulled again. And Otis can explain better than me, but you guys are able to speak to more than one lender. So in your due diligence periods where you're kind of interviewing, seeing who's going to have the best product for you, what works best for you, don't be afraid to chat with more than one lender because you think like you have to go with the other person because they pulled your credit already.
Right. And also too, you do have a shopping period. So you do have 14 days to shop for the same thing without having another hit to your score. So for instance, if Jazz goes and meets with lender A on Monday, and then she has meets with me on Wednesday, right? And we both run her credit, yes, both inquiries will show up, but she will not get hit with 2 different point drops, right? Because you're allowed a 14-day period to shop for something. Now, if she goes and gets a mortgage application and a car application, those are going to give you 2 different hits because they're 2 different industries. You're shopping for 2 different things, right? So that's also important to know about.
There's a quick question in the chat before we move on. That was,
Yeah.
can't pull it up.
Yeah, I see it. I'll read it.
Okay, cool.
I also just learned that there's a different scores and different things that you look at for. Oh, hold on. I also just learned that there's a different credit scores and different things. So, do you look at the score, the overall score? Yeah. So what we look at in terms of the scores, we're looking at the middle score. The middle score is the score that is going to be your qualifying score. So if there's multiple people on the loan, they're going to look at the lowest middle score between the 2 people or 4 people or however many people on there. If you're an individual, they're going to look at your middle score. So you have your TransUnion, your Equifax, and your Experian score. Whatever scores in the middle, that's going to be the score. So let's say you have a 730, a 700, and a 650. We're going to use the 700 as your qualifying score. That's the score that we look at, the middle score between the 3. That makes sense? Okay, perfect.
All right, cool.
Okay. But great questions. Now on to self-employed business owner checklist in terms of what you need in terms of documents to get you your application ready for pre-approval. So we'll look at the 2 most recent years of your business and personal taxes, all schedules. So in this case, we'll be looking at 21 and 22. Depending on the month that you're doing it. So let's say right now, you're towards the end of the year. So someone that is a business owner and they have business income, 20 and 20, I'm sorry, 21 and 22 are the years that we're looking at, but you've made it through most of 23. So they would probably require what's called a profit and loss statement to show that you still made that amount of income on your business that you made in 2022 because you haven't filed taxes for 23 yet, as the year is not over. Now, if that happens at the beginning of the year, let's say January, and you haven't filed your taxes yet, then they won't look for necessarily a profit and loss statement. They may ask for bank statements for that business to see the income that you've made, if that's happened prior to you filing your tax returns for that new year. If it's an LLC or a corp, we'll need the proof of ownership to showing how much ownership you have. Some people own businesses with other people. Some people own them outright, right? So we'll see the potential amount of ownership that you have in the building. And if you are a borrower who's 1099, like I help a lot of real estate agents who purchase, we may look at their 1099 in addition to their tax returns to make sure that they have all the income that they earned to qualify them, right? So these are some of the checklists that you need for self-employed business owners. Any questions about that before we move over? Jazz, come on, I see the question coming.
If you're looking at 2 or 3 years of self-employed income, is it, for example, let's say 2021 was like popping, like that year was great, and then it just feels like it's not been as much as 2021. So would it be like an average, or would it not look great to see that 2021 was excuse me, the peak, and then it's kind of like decreased a little bit since then?
Good question. So yes, in most cases it's an average, and it depends on how far the drop is between 21 and 22 in terms of the income. So typically, if it's $30,000 or less, then they're going to keep it and just average the 2 years, right? If it's a major drop, then there's a different guideline that's called declining income, right? So with a declining income, instead of them taking a 24-month average, they might only go with a 12-month average because that's more indicative of what you're currently making, right? So if you made like $150,000 in the business on 2021, but you only made $50,000 in 2022, they're probably going to just use the 50,000 instead of using the 2-year average, right? Right. So that's typically how that works. And in that instance, like I would say, okay, well, if it's that big of a gap, but we want to get more income, maybe we wait till you file 2023 and then we get 2021 out. And now you have more years that are more indicative of kind of what you currently are able to make in a market that's not the pandemic, right? Because some businesses were up in the pandemic, some businesses were down in the pandemic, right? And so it's really been a roller coaster for self-employed and business owners over the last couple of years, depending on whatever industry is that you're in terms of how the income was coming in. All right. So any other questions about self-employed before we move on? Okay, good. One thing I want to say before too we leave self-employed, this is super important. When you're doing your taxes, when you're self-employed or you own a business or you have a Schedule C or whatever the case may be, an LLC, please remember that we use the income after your expenses, right? Yeah. So people say I made 150, cool, but I wrote off 125, so you only made 25, right? That's the difference between W-2 and self-employed. W-2, you made 150, you made 150. Right? The taxes were already taken out. There's no additional write-offs typically on a W-2. Now on self-employed, you have expenses on top of your income. So it is the adjusted number that we're looking at for self-employed, not before taxes. I had to say that because it's just happened to me about a week and a half ago with clients. Made lots of money, but they wrote off 70, 85% of it. So they thought they made more than they made. And I get it. We don't want to pay taxes. Nobody wants to pay Uncle Sam, right? I absolutely get it. But just know that if you want to buy something and you want to utilize that income, that you may have to pay to play, right? So I wanted to make sure that I said that because Ashley and I deal with that pretty frequently, believe it or not, that the income that's used is after your expenses for self-employed.
I've learned that personally. Oopsies. But that's why it's important to plan. And then I see the question in the chat. What is the best way for self-employed to file taxes where they won't have to pay so much? That's also where it comes in with your accountant or CPA, letting them know your plans. Like, hey, this year or next year, I want to purchase a house. What's the best way to go about things? Otis can chime in as well, but since we're not, like accountants, CPAs, but they can definitely assist you with preparing for that. So maybe that year you may not write off as much, and take the hit so you have more income to go towards purchasing, or they'll, may structure your business, what's best. You should be a LLC or S Corp or whatever, kind of. But yeah, definitely want to prep for that if you are self-employed to make sure we can do what makes the most sense so you can qualify as much as possible.
Yeah, we can't give tax advice, but my advice would be, just like Ashley said, to talk to your tax professional, and let them
make sure they're good and they specialize in people that are self-employed to be able to guide you.
Right. Because it is one of those things where on years where you're not necessarily looking to buy, you're probably going to have more expenses because it's going to limit your liability of how much you're going to have to pay. Right. But if you are looking to buy, so it's like, okay, I'm looking to buy next year, I know that I'm going to have to maybe claim more income than I normally would have to be able to have enough income to purchase. Right. So this is where it gets particular to the individuals, and what their situations are. But obviously, just making sure that you don't kind of shoot yourself in the foot. If you're going to have those expenses, do know that yes, it might hurt me, and if I claim this income, yes, it might hurt for me to pay this year, but at least I know that I can qualify for the property that I want to purchase. And once you qualify for the property, you do those, the next year you can go back to claiming your regular level of expenses and limiting your tax liability immediately the next year. I've even had people amend them after. Like, that's something, again, I will refer you to your tax professional for. But just some advice on it. Okay, so Ashley talked to you about the home buying process. We'll talk a little bit about the loan process, right? So Ashley does her home buyer consultation with you. I'll also do a consultation with you, and then from there we'll either find out our necessary steps that we need to take to get to pre-approval, or we'll do the loan application. And once we do the loan application, you will receive your loan pre-approval. At that time, we will discuss the loan programs, the options. You'll know your estimated payment, the estimated cash that you will be bringing based on whatever program it is that we're going to go with for you. Once we do that part, you guys will go back out with Ashley. You'll find a property, submit an offer, get offer accepted, and that's when the process starts, right? So the loan process is typically about a 30-day process, as most real estate contracts are about 30 days. You have some that are longer, some that are shorter, but the average is 30 days, right? We've done them in 14 days. We've done them in 45 days, right? So it just depends. We'll stick with the 30-day process because that's what most of the contracts will be. So from that point, from the time you sign that contract and you put your deposit into escrow, in 30 days, it's all going to be over with. It's probably going to be the biggest emotional roller coaster you've been on for the next 30 days because you're like, oh my God, I'm excited, I'm scared, I'm worried, I'm happy, right? From that point, once you put your earnest money deposit in, and that is your kind of seed of faith to the seller that you're serious about purchasing this property, that deposit will be credited towards your total cash that you need for the transaction. Okay. So let's say, for an example, you make a $5,000 deposit and your cash to close is $20,000. Now your cash to close is $15,000 because you've already made a $5,000 deposit towards that cash to close. Okay. From there, we will get the disclosure sent out to you. All loans will come out with loan disclosures. One of those major disclosures is called the intent to proceed. That allows us to order your appraisal, right? So the lender orders the appraisal. The appraiser will go out and do an appraisal on the property, and the appraisal is to determine the value of the home, right? They want to make sure this house is worth what you're buying it for, because the lender doesn't want to loan you money for something that it's not worth, right? So if you're in escrow for $600,000 on a property, but it only appraises for 550, then the bank's only going to give you 550. They're not going to give you 600,000, right? Just had this happen about 2 months ago with a client. The property appraised for about $35,000 less than what they were in contract for. This is happening now because a lot of sellers are upset that they missed the peak, right? And home sales have peaked, right? They're not still going up, right? So home sales prices are starting to kind of stagnate a little bit in certain areas, right? Real estate is extremely local to that area, right? So that's the disclosure signing. You'll sign those initial, and those are signed electronically. So those will be sent to you via email. You'll sign those. We'll update any documents that we need to at that point, pay stubs, if like a year's about to end, maybe W-2s, etc. And then at that point, me and my team, I have a processor and an assistant that works with me. We will take that loan and we will upload it and get it submitted over to underwriting, all the way structured out. Underwriting will review it and they will issue what's called a conditional loan approval. That means they have approved your loans. We need such conditions. Examples of conditions are a copy of the appraisal. They want to make sure that it's nothing wrong with the home and that it's at the value that it's at. Another good one is if you're self-employed, maybe it's a profit and loss statement. That's a condition. I just had a borrower who was using child support income. They needed an update on the child support order. So those are examples of what conditions are. Once those conditions are fulfilled, we give that back to the underwriter. They sign off on it, and then we get the favorite phrase that all real estate people love to hear, and as a buyer, you're going to love to hear, is CTC, the clear to close. Okay, that means I'm not going to ask you for no more paperwork. Everything is absolutely over in terms of that process. And then they're going to schedule you to sign your loan docs with a notary. You're going to have your notarized loan document signed on doc signing. That's when, the emotions start to run, like, yes, I finally have made it. Once the docs are signing, typically the following day, we will fund the loan. That means when the bank will send the actual funds for your loan to the escrow company, you will wire your closing funds to the escrow company, and the loan will be funded. Depending on the county in which you're purchasing in, some counties will record the same day as funding. Some counties will record the following day. The recording day is important because that's the day you get the keys as the buyer. You don't get the keys when we fund, you get the keys when we record. So once you record, Ashley's going to pull up on you and you guys will, exchange the keys, some tears, maybe have a glass of champagne. And that's when we have our yay moment. There's a question in the chat. How do multi-unit homes work? Multi-unit homes work essentially the same as a single family home would work. The difference is that if you're looking at multi-unit properties, we get to use 75% of the rental income from the other unit to add into your income. So an example, someone, let's say it's a duplex, right? And there's another unit and they pay $2,000 per month. We get to use 75% of that $2,000 to add into your income to help you qualify for a higher purchase price, right? So that's the major difference, right, between multi-unit and single family, is that you have rental income that needs to be accounted for. And then there's, and it varies based on whether it's a 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit, right? And it also varies based on the particular loan program, whether it's a FHA multi-unit purchase property, and the conventional just came out recently, because if you want to purchase a multi-unit home on conventional, they typically had higher down payments between 15 and 25%, depending on if it was a 3 or 4-unit property. Now you can actually purchase up to 4 units with a conventional loan with a 5% minimum down payment, right? So that's something that's new that just came out about 3 weeks ago. So multi-unit, very, very similar, but you just got to be careful because we have to look at, are the units already occupied? Are they vacant? What are they currently receiving in rents? Is that enough for you as a new landlord, right? Because most of the time, if you want to buy multi-units, you want to try to, the goal is to try to live for free, at least have your part subsidized, right? But often, especially in LA, rents are undervalued because people have been living there for a long time. So sometimes people are moving in or they place properties on sale for to purchase, but the rents are so low, they're harder to sell. You like, well, I was paying more for this when I was staying on my own. Well, I mean, paying less for this when I was staying on my own. So that's where it's super important. And me and Ashley do the research. We'll find out what the current rents are on the property. And so that way you know exactly what you're getting yourself into and how much your liability will be in terms of that monthly mortgage payment.
Yeah, and keep in mind if the current renters, so let's say the current landlord seller, they're selling the property and they say tenants are staying in place, meaning whoever's living there, they don't plan on assisting with them with relocating. If they're under market rents, the new owner, that will be your responsibility to either relocate them, which can be costly, or but that would be on the new buyer that becomes the owner to figure that portion out. So it's just something to keep in mind, like you said, especially in LA, depending on what city, what area, if there's under rent control and all that, there's a process to it, and it can be costly. So just kind of depends.
Yeah, and Jazz has a question in here. If the purchase, if you purchase a property that is much less than what you're approved for, can you use the difference?
Good question.
No, you cannot. So the loan amount is based upon whatever the property's value is. Now, what you can do is you can apply for, we can do a renovation loan for you, where let's say you're approved for 700,000 and you find a property that's, for 600,000, we can utilize a renovation loan and use that extra 100K to put into the property, and you will make a mortgage payment based off the total 700K of that property. So there are renovation loans for that, Jasmine. But your standard loan, no, if you pre-approved for 700, you buy 600, they're going to give you 600. They're not, you can't keep the other 100,000. There was
But good question, because like on HGTV, they'll be like, oh, well, since it's less, we can do da-da-da. And it's like, well, where are those funds coming from?
It
So
doesn't work like
great
that.
question.
Right. One more question in here. How many programs can you qualify for at a time? You can qualify for multiple different programs. And there's a difference between programs and products, right? So there's loan products, like your standard loans that most of us are familiar with, your standard FHA loans, standard conventional loans, etc. But there's different types of conventional loans. There's different types of down payment assistance loans. There's FHA down payment assistance loans. There's conventional down payment assistance loans. There are city programs. There are county programs. There are state programs. So you can, now it all depends on if the program that you're looking at allows for it to be layered with another program. Some don't. Right. And so by the time you go out and start shopping, you're going to have an idea of the type of program and product that you're using and what those numbers kind of look like. Before you even get out there and start to search for a property, kind of what you're looking at. But you can have, like we've done pre-approvals for someone on FHA, and we've done pre-approvals for someone on conventional, and they've had both pre-approvals, right? Like, especially if you're looking for a condo or a townhome, a lot of those aren't often FHA approved. So we will try to do, if the borrower qualifies, we'll try to do a conventional pre-approval for them, because they don't need to be additional approval to be purchased as a conventional loan as they do need to be for an FHA loan. So it could vary, just to kind of depending on the product and the program that we find best for your situation. Okay. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is going to be a little exercise for us today. And this
is more polls. I forgot.
Oh yeah. Oh, we didn't skip the polls. Let's go to the polls. Let's go to the polls. Okay, so let's go to the next one. We're going to do a poll right here. If you guys can please all participate. This one is just to find out, how soon are you looking to purchase? And we'll bust through a couple of these.
Oh, and these polls, don't worry, like it doesn't show up to the other participants or anything. I don't even know if we can see who says what. It's just for us.
I can see it.
Okay, but yeah, so since I'm not a host, so when y'all vote, nobody else will see it.
Yeah, so I mean, and also it doesn't say who said it. So
right. giving y'all the comfort, like, is everybody
Yeah.
going to my appraisal? Like, nobody will also see.
So we have some that are looking in the next 3 months, and someone in the next 12 months. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay, good. So in that one,
I would say regardless, well, 3 months definitely. Let's get you on the calendar next week, have a chat, see where things are at. But even 12 months, depending where you're at financially, if you need to work on things, I would still say let's at the end of the workshop, we'll share our information. I'll also send you a follow-up email and text. Use the calendar links, get on our calendar so we can kind of game plan.
and I just launched one more. What type of employed are you? And Jazz, we know you're both. Okay, you can try to vote for both. Okay, so we got, okay. Perfect, thank you. All right, then we'll do a top five, and we'll do the top five, and then we'll launch one. We got 2 more polls that we'd like to get answered from you guys. So this one is super important, and this is for something that I do that to really empower you as home buyers, especially first-time home buyers, so you can kind of get a better knowledge of your own financial state as it looks pertaining to purchasing real estate, right? Like, you know your own lifestyle already, but what are we looking at, and how do you put yourself in position and know? Like Ashley said, a lot of people are afraid, right? There's that fear of like, I don't want to get told no. I don't want to, some people, then there's a fear of like, I don't want to be lied to or scammed or whatever the case may be. All of those are legitimate fears. So I've created this thing called Know Your Numbers, your top five, right? So these are the top five things that, in terms of the income part, that we should be looking at, and you should be asking yourself, okay, what is your current income? What are your current credit debt obligations monthly? That means debts that show up on your credit report that you pay every month: car notes, credit cards, student loans, personal loans, etc. Right? What are those? Right? These are questions you should write down and answer to yourself, not to me. Not even if you don't have it at this moment. These are things that you should ask yourself. Right? How much can I afford in a monthly mortgage payment? You got to be real. You'd be surprised how many people say, I want to buy a house, but I don't know how much I can spend or want to spend. Right? Obviously, we're going to go through and see what you qualify for, but you know your lifestyle better than I do, better than Ashley does, right? If you just can't give up the Starbucks, maybe you got to buy the cheaper house, right? Whatever the case may be, that's a good question that you need to ask yourself. What do I have saved up for down payment and closing costs? How much money do I have? Is there a gift? Is there a family or friend or someone that's able to help me in this process? What do I have at my disposal in terms of resources for my assets? Okay. And what am I currently paying for that can be sacrificed for me to enable me to purchase this property? Right. They don't want to hear that part. because yes, to purchase a home, especially in California, there's probably going to be some sacrifice that needs to be made. But remember, if purchasing a home is important as we said it is, we said we want generational wealth. We want to do this for our children. What is more important than them? You can't tell me that the Zara trips are more important than building generational wealth, right? So these are tough things, but remember, purchasing a home is still the number one way to build wealth, right? So I won't put Ashley on blast, but Ashley's house is probably worth a lot more than it was 4 years ago when she bought it.
To be honest, I can't afford our current value of our home. No, we can't afford our home or neighborhood. So good thing we got what we did. Right. Because just the appreciation, the values have gone up so much. So it's definitely, if you can qualify, get into something sooner than later. If you plan on staying in Southern California. Now, if you're going to move somewhere far, Timbuktu, where things are super affordable and they don't really have that much growth, that's a different story. But if you're anywhere that is experiencing growth, whether it's in California, Las Vegas, whatever, then you definitely want to get in sooner than later, because things go up unless you're having significant financial increases. Then yeah, that's a part of it. So
absolutely. So be ready to ask yourself these tough 5 questions. I would encourage each of you to ask yourself these questions if you haven't already, prior to meeting with either one of Ashley and I, so you kind of know where you stand personally. Okay.
Yeah, and like Otis said, he can tell you what you can qualify for, like your max. That doesn't mean we're going to make you stretch yourself to that number if it's a stretch for you. And also keep in mind, some people don't think about, let's say, for example, if you're purchasing, you're single or you're a couple, but you have no kids and you know you want to have kids in the future. Unless you're going to have significant increases in your income, keep in mind, okay, how much is childcare? Like, you know what I mean? Because people are kind of thinking like numbers in the now when you want to think about those type of things. Like, or are you guys currently steering a car? Do you plan on having another one later? So you want to have that flexibility. Obviously, we're going to say sacrifices are worth it, but like Otis said, you know your lifestyle, and we want to make sure you're comfortable. You don't want to be house poor. That's when people kind of spend every last dime on the house. Like you want to have some wiggle room. You want to also have some savings. So in case things, you know, it is a home, it has to be maintained in case things, you know, kind of go haywire. You have funds for that. And just to be comfortable, you know, in case things can always change. That part. And then quickly, you mentioned closing costs, Otis. Buyers in the media and all that, we always hear down payment. We never usually hear people discuss closing costs. Can you tell them what's included in closing costs and like about roughly what % of the purchase price that is?
Yes, great question. Yeah, people, I got my down payment. Closing costs. What's that? Right. So closing costs are typically made up of three components, right? So closing costs are your third party fees. So that's what you pay the title and escrow company. The seller pays their side, the buyer pays their side. That's one part that your closing cost is made up of. The second part is your impounds, right? Your impounds. This is essentially a savings account for your homeowner's insurance and your property taxes, right? So depending on the month that you close, they'll take a set amount of homeowners of your property tax, and that'll be a part of your closing costs. So when your property taxes are due, the person who you make your mortgage payment to, that's called the servicer, they will pay your property taxes on your behalf because you've been paying it monthly and you put a chunk of money in that account when you closed. Okay. So it does vary based upon the month that you're closing and how much of those need to be paid into that impound account. Okay. That's the second part of your closing costs. And the third part of your closing costs is in the fact if there's any lender fees, right? So like if there's a down payment assistance program, there's typically a fee to utilize that, a funding fee, etc. Those are the three components that make up the closing costs. Now, some are going to be higher, some are going to be less, but I would say on average, the closing cost is about 2 to 2.5% of whatever is of the purchase price. So let's say, for instance, if you are buying something for 500,000, closing costs could be about $10,000. Okay. Give or take the month that you're closing. Because if you're closing, I think this is the last month where they're collecting 6 months. Like anyone closing this month, they're going to take 6 months of your property taxes. So if the property taxes are $400 a month, they're going to take 6 times 4. That's going to be another $2,400 that's going to be included in your closing costs. Okay. So those are the three main components of closing costs. And when we do a pre-approval, we estimate the closing costs because we don't know what the third party fees are yet because you're not in escrow and title yet. So we typically try to estimate them higher because I always want to tell you that it's less money than tell you that it's more money later, right? So we typically try to estimate the fees higher so that we can tell you that the closing costs in your cash to close is less than what we originally talked about. I would say that happens 99% of the time. Very, very seldomly is the closing cost more than what we talked about on the pre-approval. Okay.
And then you mentioned like the monthly payment. So real quick, so you guys know what's included in your monthly mortgage payment. Otis, I'll let you.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, right? And if you're putting down less than 20%, on a loan, it's going to have mortgage insurance. Okay. So obviously the principal and interest is pretty self-explanatory. Taxes and insurance, the property taxes, any homeowner's insurance. In the mortgage insurance is essentially a mortgage insurance policy to ensure the lender, if you're ever to default on that loan, that they can turn in that policy and get the money back. If you guys we seem pretty young on this call, but maybe you remember in 2008, there was, before mortgage insurance existed, when those people defaulted on those loans, those banks were out of that money, right? And that's why we had, part of the reason why we had the crash that we had. So now there's mortgage insurance to ensure that if this property is defaulted on, that it could be, the lender can be made whole on the the loan that they made out to you. Okay. Now, once you reach 20% equity in your property, you can remove that mortgage insurance from your payment, essentially lowering your monthly mortgage payment, right? So that's something that we watch with you. So let's say if you bought a property, you put down 5%, you have 5% equity in your property. So now you need to get an additional 15% to remove that mortgage insurance. So every time a property sells in your neighborhood for a higher value than yours does, that's a new comp. That's more equity in your property, getting you closer to that point. Home equity is slowing down compared to what it was, but it's still pretty good. On average, we're going to make about 5 to 7% in LA year over year. Yeah. So at 5% a year, in 3 years, you would have 20% and you could remove your monthly mortgage insurance, right? Sometimes it happens faster than that. Almost rarely does it slower than that, right? Because we have a housing shortage in LA. So the values are always going up because there's more people wanting to buy houses than houses for them to buy. Okay.
Plus, and keep in mind, every month you pay your mortgage payment, that is decreasing your loan balance as well. So you have appreciation, plus you just simply making your monthly payment.
Correct.
That was a question.
Yeah, so that's appreciation and equity in a nutshell. Appreciation is your home value going up based on the comparable sales in the property, and the equity is you paying down the mortgage every month. That's lowering your balance. So you kind of got two things working in your favor at the same time, to get your equity increase. Okay. All right. There's a question. Do you have to hold on? Do you have to show that you can afford it in the beginning, or can you get help from a family member or a friend? So
that was pertaining to closing costs.
Oh, okay. Okay, to closing costs. So closing costs can come in the form of a gift. You can receive a gift towards closing costs. The seller can also contribute towards closing costs. So there's a property, maybe it's been sitting on the market for some time. Those are the ones that are probably more likely to agree to help with closing costs. So let's say your closing costs $10,000 and you guys write in a contract, seller to help pay closing costs by $5,000. If they agree to it, then they can pay $5,000 of your closing costs. So closing costs can come in the form of a gift if the client or borrower doesn't have it up front.
Or you can get it from a family member with a gift letter. And Otis and his team, though, there's a document you would use and source of funds and all that. But yeah, you can get it from the seller in the form of concession, or you can also get gift funds.
Correct.
And that can be for your down payment as well.
Yeah. Now, the seller can help cover closing costs. The seller cannot help cover down payment, right? So, but gifts can cover down payment and or closing costs. Okay. All right. Let's go to my exercise for real now here. So let's talk DTI. This is probably the most, outside of credit, the most important thing. I would say they're probably neck and neck in terms of buying a home, especially in this type of market where the home values are high and the home rates are high. The DTI is the number one thing that's kind of being hit, because some people are having decent credit, but they're like, hey, my DTI is out of whack, right? So the DTI is a debt to income ratio that measures the amount of income that a person or organization or business generates to service debt. Okay. The DTI of 50% is typically the highest ratio a borrower could have and still get qualified for a mortgage. But generally lenders seek for you to be under 45%. That's more so containing to your standard conventional loans. But as I said in the next sentence, this can vary based on the type of loan. Okay. A low DTI ratio indicates sufficient income relative to pay the debt servicing, and it makes the borrower more attractive, right? So this is, remember that automated underwriting system that I told you we run your file through to validate your pre-approval? It's an algorithm-based thing, right? So it looks at the DTI. They look at, okay, if someone's at the top of the allowable DTI of that program, there may be one emergency away from not being able to pay something, right? So this is a huge component of the home buying process, especially in this market, and also so that you're not living, like Ashley said, house poor, right? You don't want 60% of your income And also we're looking at your income pre-tax if you're W-2, which you're actually not even making all of that money, right? To be going towards the house and you're not able to, eat. We got jobs. We're supposed to leave tap ramen in the past. Okay. So this DTI is super important. On the next slide, I'm gonna show you an example of how to calculate DTI. So this is something that you can do on your own. This is something you could ask questions about. This is something that we do on our side. And again, I want to give you this so that you can be more empowered and confident as you guys go into the home buying process. So we can go to the next page. Okay. So we're going to go through a quick example, and I'm going to show you guys how to calculate your own debt to income ratios, right? Utilizing essentially this same formula. Okay. So in this example, borrower, I should use a name, borrower makes $85,000 in an annual salary. Divide that by 12, that's $7,083 a month. If you're W-2, this is gross payment. This is the gross payment that we would qualify you for. So in this example, borrower is a W-2 employee. The borrower has 3 credit debts. Okay, credit debts. Remember we talked about that, things that show up in your credit report that you pay monthly. They have a car they pay $500 a month for, and they have 2 credit cards that they pay $50 each on. Okay, so that says is that we have $600 in monthly credit debt. Okay, so the average DTI allowed is typically between 45 and 50%. Let's say 50% for this type of loan. So 50% of the monthly income is $3,541. That's 50% of that $7,083. Okay, from that point we deduct the $600 of debt. Okay, leaving us with $2,941 of qualifying income that this person can use towards their mortgage. That means they cannot get a mortgage that's more than $2,941. Now, sometimes people don't want one that high based on their max. Remember, Ashley said this. Maybe they don't want to spend their maximum, but now you know what your maximum is. And you know, okay, this can get me what I want, or this can't give me what I want. Okay, this can't give me what I want. So maybe I should pay these credit cards off and see if I can increase my purchase price. Maybe I should look at paying my car off so I can increase my purchase price. But at this point, we've simply broke down how much qualifying income you have to purchase a property. Okay, this is extremely easy to do if you know how much money you make per year and you know how much credit debts you have on your credit. This is the huge component where people are losing out right now in this market. It's because they're like, oh, just because I can't afford something don't mean you should, right? So I see it all the time with $1,100 car note. Yeah, I could afford it, but it's now tapping into how much property I could buy, right? I have 4 credit cards. The balances aren't really that high, but when you add $50 and $50 and $50 and $50, now that's $200 in monthly income. That's going away. $200 seems very minuscule, but $200 in monthly income could be the difference between another $20,000 in purchasing price for you buying a home, right? So this is a huge component of what you should be looking at as a first-time home buyer. Now, it might be a little bit detailed. I might made it seem really easy, but it is that easy, right? You simply look at how much money you made for the year. You're going to divide that by 12, find out how much money you make per month. Then you're going to take that by 45 or 50%. 50% is a good number to do. It's an easy whole number. And then from there, you're going to subtract your monthly debts. And that's your qualifying income in terms of how much you could afford on a mortgage. Does
What's
that
ratio? Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ashley.
No, I was gonna say, what's that ratio for the car note? If it's for is it every $100? I forget. How does it go? How much it decreases your purchasing power?
Yeah, it's like every $100 is like $15,000.
Okay. And then for those with student loans, don't freak out if you have high student loans, because you guys in Otis will, guide you in that process, but you can get on payment plans and there's options. So don't freak out. Like if you have like $100,000 student debt, like there's ways you can still purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and on student loan debts, well, I'll say that before we move on, is with student loan debts, there are a couple of ways to still purchase utilizing that. So FHA, it was about a year now, they came out, FHA used to use 1% of whatever your balance was as the monthly debt, right? So if you owed 100,000, we had to put a monthly debt of $1,000 towards your income, right? They've lowered that to 0.5%. right? So they will look at a 0.5% for student loan debts on FHA loans. Now on conventional loans, Freddie Mac, they will allow also that 50%. But on conventional loans, Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, if you have a income-based repayment plan or an income-driven repayment plan, that could be used to satisfy that debt. So I've had people with $150,000 student loan debts making payments of $40 a month, and we're able to qualify them on a house and that student loan debt at $40 a month. So there are ways, and talk to us about it. Talk to me or Ashley about it. That because if it's in deferment or in forbearance, they're going to make us utilize that 0.5%, right, of whatever the balance is. And that may be fine if it doesn't hit your income enough to where you're not qualifying for where you want to qualify for. But if that 0.5% is, then we may want to look at applying for the income driven repayment plan. And you can plead hardships on that, right? The client I was telling you guys about earlier, multiple $100,000 student loan debt, she had a $60 student loan payment on that. And that's how we were actually able to get her into the property. So don't think that debts like student loans should rule you out of the home buying process. There's still ways around it for sure.
Before we move on, there was a question about what is the purchasing power of a borrower with that's able to afford a monthly payment of the $2,900.
I was waiting for that question. I knew somebody would ask, right? So great question. So we convert that over, and it's gonna vary based on where the interest rate is, right? And interest rates we know right now are typically a lot higher than they have been over the last couple of years, right? So at a $2,900 maximum payment, that's roughly based, and it's gonna vary depending on their credit score. Let's say they have good credit and they're able to get a good interest rate pricing. That's probably going to have them around a $350,000 purchase price, right? Whereas 2 years ago that would have been like a $500,000 purchase price, right? So the timing definitely matters, right? In terms of when you purchase. But the thing is this right now is, yes, the interest rates are high, but people are actually able to get their offers accepted now, right? They're actually able to not have to compete with 50 deals and cash buyers and things of that sort. And so you can always change the rate. Rates will eventually go down, and you can refinance your home after 6 months of being in it to a lower rate if rates are lower at that time, right? So, but roughly at that payment amount, we're looking at around $350,000 purchase price. But good question. Jazz fell from my silent test. Good job. I was like, who's gonna ask? Okay, I think we have one more poll. Put this up really quickly.
Okay, cool. Oh, and this is household, okay? So if it's just
household income.
It's you and a spouse, or if it's you and another person, you could be purchasing with your sister, sibling, a parent, whatever the case may be.
Okay, we'll give a couple more seconds.
Anything after this? No? Okay, cool.
Okay, we got some pretty high income earners in this group. Okay.
And while you guys are doing the poll, briefly, I wanted to touch on it really quick. The purchase price versus the monthly payment. I want to mention that because sometimes people are thinking, LA is so expensive. I'm going to look out in the IE or, Ontario Ranch, whatever the case may be. Very true. Home prices are lower there. But when you're looking at things, you want to make sure you're looking at what, and Otis will assist you with that. What does the monthly payment look like on a property in whatever city or county? Because everywhere has different taxes. And sometimes areas will have Melrose. And those Melrose will mean you're going to have a higher tax rate. So like, for instance, it may have a lower purchase price. The home may be $500,000 out there versus, I don't know, $650 here or whatever. But if those taxes are like way higher, it can make a big difference in your monthly payment. So I always just like to throw that out there for buyers to look at the monthly payment when comparing areas, not just the list price of the home, because the monthly payment is what's going to affect you more than the list price. So
Yeah,
when to
that's
throw that out there.
that's
Or also if monthly payment, if you're looking at single family versus townhome condo, yes, townhome condos are going to be a lower list price, but how much is the HOA? Is it a brand new construction community out in Ontario Ranch that has Melrose? All those things come at a price because those are brand new areas. They have to have new infrastructure, new schools, roads, all that. So that's where those Melrose come from. So you just want to keep that in mind when comparing, different properties. So just keep that in mind.
all right. So before we end, we're gonna launch this last poll, and please be honest, because yes, buyer fatigue and anxiety is a real thing. I think even Jasmine addressed it at the beginning. Is just feeling like, oh my God, I'm chasing a moving target here. It just keeps moving. But we want to know how confident you are about the home buying market.
I think if there's anything else that we usually touch on. Oh, so let's say, for example, you guys are looking, there's a few in the LA area, but they're more common in other areas. Let's say you guys are really into new construction, throw it out there. We can assist with that process. I've helped buyers, quite a few buyers purchase new construction homes, but I, as the buyer's agent, if you want to work with me, I have to be present your first visit to that community. When you walk into that sales office, when you go see those models, I have to be there. I like to throw it out in advance because I've had before. I tell people I gotta be there. And they're like, oh yeah, I know. I've had a person, they stopped by. It was an area they didn't plan on purchasing. They knew what I said, but they just thought they were browsing. Anyway, loved it, ended up moving forward. They were still the purchase property. I just couldn't assist them with the process because builders, they are not going to compensate an agent to represent you, represent you if we're not present that first visit. So if you're interested in that, let me know. We can set up, even if you're early on the process, I'll meet you at the community just so you can kind of check it out. Outside lenders such as Otis, you can use you can use an outside lender to purchase a new construction community. You do not have to use the preferred lender that the builder is working with. You can always use outside representation. So just like to throw that out there. If you guys
We've actually done that together. We've helped new construction buyer as well. So, and it's super important. Ashley's talked about it, what's going on in terms of the industry and the representation. I just went through this with a client who had a seller who was a selling agent who was representing both sides, and they felt like they weren't getting the best of service. So it is super important if you are even looking at new construction that you want to walk in there with your person, because you know that Ashley has your best interest. They're the builder, they're the seller, they have their best interests at heart, not necessarily yours, right? So that's super important to make sure that you have somebody that's licensed and knowledgeable, that has your back and is looking out for your best interests.
Also, with new construction, they have their own contracts. They do not use the standard California residential purchase agreement that we'll use with the normal sale. So they have their own contracts. They can literally put whatever they want in there. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. That is pretty important. New construction, it can be awesome. It's brand new. You can kind of fix finishes. For the buyers that want lower maintenance and not so concerned with, the systems of the home having to be replaced or more energy efficient, they do have the perks. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. Keep that in mind. Do y'all have any other questions?
Yeah, I don't know if they do, but I want to say thank you. I appreciate you ladies taking your time out this morning to jump on here with us. Obviously, thank you, Ashley, as always. I appreciate you, my partner in crime in real estate. So I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you for
too.
Go ahead.
The first question is the possibility of, I remember at the beginning of the session you were talking about, if you want your dream home, it may not be your first purchase, but maybe like a second purchase. And I wondered if that was the same, or that is true also if you wanted to do a multifamily, 3 or 4 unit as your first property. Would it realistically make sense to purchase a condo first and then a multifamily, or is that also within reach as a first property potentially?
Yeah, I would say that if owning multi-property is a goal, it's, you got to really do your homework, right? Because it's a lot more liability, right, that comes with it. It's a lot more responsibility that comes with it. But in
Okay.
terms of going from that type of property to a single family property, that's easier to do, or a condo. Because if you have a condo, right, or a house, and you purchase that, now you want to buy a multi-unit property, right? But you don't want to pay investment down payment, right? Investor down payment is 20%, right? You want to come in with the 5% down, or 3.5% down, 3% down. They're going to say, why are you moving from a house or a condo to a multi-unit property where you're going to share walls or share living, right? So it's easier to go from a multi-unit property to a condo or a single family home versus the other way around. So that's super important to note as you plan out your, what you want to do, is knowing what do I want to take on. But I do think multi-unit is a great first option because you have other people helping pay, right? So it's not as obligatory on you. But the other thing is that you also have liability. If their water's not working, they're going to say, hey, Dr. Jazz, my hot water's not working. And so you got to be prepared, to have reserves to cover costs and things of that sort when you buy multi-unit, because you're not only a homeowner, you're a landlord, right? So, but that's something that you just strategize out. I think it's much more in reason than a lot of people think. I probably helped at least 5 or 6 first-time home buyers in the last year and a half that purchased multi-unit as their first home. So it's definitely within reason.
Okay. My last question was just, what are your thoughts, both of your thoughts on NACA?
I have not personally, I was going through the process to become a NACA approved agent. I didn't complete it. From my understanding, NACA is a great program if you can get the offer accepted. I would think it would depend on what area you're purchasing in. It's a very lengthy process if you're very organized and can stick with the process. But depending on what area you're purchasing in the market and how competitive it is, it's convincing the listing agent to accept that offer. Like here you are, I think, what is NACA? Is it like a 60-day closing? I haven't. Well, yeah, a minimum 60-day closing versus this other buyer that's like, let's just say, for example, FHA, they're closing in 30 days. It's trying to get them to, accept it. And then with NACA, you also have to use their vendors where it can be beneficial for the seller too, but it's just getting listing agents to be willing to sell this program to their sellers when you may have a cash buyer, or you have somebody that's putting 20% down, or someone that's putting 5% down, they're closing 30 days. So I think it's a great program in theory if you can get the offer accepted. But to me, sometimes what good is this program if you can't get the offer accepted? So
thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, personally use it, but I hear those that are able to get the deal to work. It's great for the buyer.
Yeah, that was my part. I think it's a great program as well, but I would say the success rate on NACA is extremely low, for some of the reasons like Ashley just said, just the timing alone, because that type of financing is going to be disclosed to the seller, and in our market that moves really fast, it's a lot of red tape that a lot of sellers don't want to be involved in. So it can work great in some places. The other thing is that the process of NACA, of getting approved through NACA, I've heard so many mixed, non-positive reviews in terms of what the process is like to get approved for NACA and actually get the property. So I maybe know one handful of people who successfully use NACA. I probably know hundreds of people that tried. So
wow.
that's I mean 100 people that tried and maybe 4 or 5 people that it worked for.
And not to discourage you if you're going to go through the process, I would say maybe if you're going to do that process, have a traditional pre-approval as well. So that way, if it's an amazing opportunity, you're not missing out because of the program. So yeah, and also like I said, it depends on what area. Like if you're someone that's purchasing out of state where it's not nearly as competitive, the closings are lengthier there anyway, then that's a different story. But as far as like in the LA area or LA County, yeah, it's just, I've heard people, like you said, that started the process, but not that like successfully completed and purchased. So I would say do both if you're going to, explore the option. So that way you don't miss out on the property. Let me see. Well, thank y'all for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll have more questions that pop in your head. Totally fine. I said if you're on Instagram, you're not already following us, please follow us. Ashley Katie Realtor. What is theirs? Is it Mortgage Milton or is it Milton?
Otis L. Milton, and I put my link tree in the chat. So
Awesome. I will, like I said, you get an email that has our contact information, and you'll also receive a text. We'll put the calendar link so you can get on our calendar so we can have those quick phone calls just to kind of see where things are at in the process. We want to just kind of learn where you're at, what your plans are, even if it's a year out, just so we can kind of help you come up with a plan. So don't be scared. Let's hop on the phone real quick. Some people, they'll come to the workshop, they have amazing questions, and then they ghost us. I'm like, what? That's such a good question. So we're not going to make you move any faster than you feel comfortable. If you're a year out and you want to stick with that, that's totally fine. But I'd rather someone be prepared and they can move forward sooner if they choose to, than they're in a situation where their lease is up. They got to be out in a few months and they're not ready. They're not prepared to purchase. So rather you be prepared than to and move slower than need to move quickly, but you're not able to. If you have any family or friends that are in the market to maybe purchase or need to sell property, please keep me in mind. Anyone that has any financing needs, or if they're purchasing or they own a property and may need to do, a refi or HELOC, anything like that, please keep Otis in mind as well. Please share our information. We love referrals. That's awesome. And let's stay in touch. And yeah, if you have any friends that like this, if you think this information could be beneficial to them, but they couldn't make it today, please connect me with them. I can, or just tell them to text me, DM me, whatever. I can get them the recording for this. So they can still get the information.
absolutely awesome. Thank you, ladies. I appreciate you all, and
Thank you.
the rest of the weekend.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.